President Donald Trump signaled that Israel would take the lead in any potential military action against Iran if a nuke deal isn't reached. So, can the White House make a deal to lower tension in the Middle East? I'm Veronica Dudo. Let's find out.
This is In America Today from the Ticker News Studios in New York City.
President Donald Trump again welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House, this time in the midst of a global economic reset. During the meeting, President Trump told reporters that if Iran does not give up its nuclear weapons program, military action led by Israel is a real possibility. His remarks come just days before scheduled talks in Oman between the U.S. and Iranian officials over Tehran's nuclear ambitions. While the U.S. is pushing for direct negotiation, Iran insists the talks will remain indirect. Here's President Trump discussing a potential deal.
In Iran, and they're so smart. They're very smart people, but you know they're in a rough situation, rough regime. But they understand, and the leaders understand. And I'm not asking for much. I don't. They can't have a nuclear weapon, and I've said that.
For more, I'm joined by Ruthie Blum, a former advisor at the Office of Prime Minister Netanyahu, a senior contributing editor at JNS, and the co-host of Israel Undiplomatic on JNS TV. Welcome.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
So there has been so much happening this week. First, let's begin with what impact might President Trump's comments have for the future of U.S.-Iran relations?
Well, you know, you have to be a bit amused at the way that President Trump described, you know, he said, I'm not asking for much, only no nukes, okay? And that is the essence. That's the problem here. The essence of he's not asking for much, but he's asking for everything because the Iranian regime insists on having nukes while lying about them. And that's been the case for years now. So I don't anticipate that much is going to come of these talks on Saturday. For one thing, Iran won't even acknowledge what President Trump said about which officials are going to be meeting. He said it's going to be direct talks with high officials. It was reported possibly the Iranian foreign minister was one of those officials, but Iran denies it and says, no, we're not, we're only going to have indirect talks. So that doesn't bode well for these talks. And I don't think that President Trump really believes that they're going to forfeit the nukes. I think that he's trying to show that he's doing everything possible to avoid a military confrontation, but is willing to engage in one, mainly, I would say, even assisting Israel in actually carrying it out.
So I wanted to get your thoughts also on his comments. How significant do you think Israel's role could be in any potential military strike on Iran?
Well, as we've seen, Israel actually struck Iranian sites in October after there had been 2 strikes on Israel by Iran. Hundreds of missiles flew across Israel and into Israel. Well, they were mainly intercepted, but they were aiming for all Israeli cities and the airport, etc. And then Israel launched a counterstrike in October that took out many of their air defenses. So what the assumption is that Israel has totally weakened Iran's ability to fend off an attack on the nuclear sites. But what seems to be the case is that Israel, though, has the capability and the air force to carry out strikes on the nuclear facilities. Iran is huge, and the facilities are spread out. And it is the United States that has the proper weaponry, the bunker busters. So my assumption is that a joint operation would involve assistance by the United States and probably air cover in the event of an Iranian counterattack. but would help Israel with the right weaponry, etc., and allowing Israel to do what it needs to do. And the reason that Israel needs to do it is that Iran poses a direct threat to the Jewish state. It has threatened over and over again that its aim is to wipe Israel off the map.
Now, of course, there's some mystery surrounding these talks in Oman. Now, what are the risks of military escalation in the region if these talks break down?
Well, I think everybody assumes that the risks are that you're going to spark some kind of nuclear war, or at least a conventional war with a lot of ballistic missiles. However, what we really need to ask ourselves is, what are the risks of not doing it? Now, I fear more consent on the part of Iran than I fear rejection. And the reason is that any consent on the regime's part will be a lie. They'll say, okay, we will, as was the case with the previous deal with Iran that President Obama signed, the JCPOA. It was, okay, and they'll be monitoring, but of course the International Atomic Energy Agency was unable to go in and monitor the sites because the Iranians wouldn't let them in. So I really doubt that anything good can come of these talks. So as I said, we're all waiting here with bated breath to see what comes of it. I do not see an alternative to a military strike. I think the risks of not tackling those nuclear weapons in formation right now is greater than the risk of doing it.
What role do other regional players like Saudi Arabia or even Oman have in either calming or complicating the situation?
You see, Saudi Arabia, it's an interesting question because, you see, part of what happened, the October 7th war that erupted in 2023 when Hamas invaded southern Israel, and then Hezbollah in Lebanon joined in, and the Houthis in Yemen, etc., that Israel and Saudi Arabia were on the verge of reaching some kind of normalization agreement, or for Saudi Arabia to be part of the Abraham Accords. And one of the reasons that for the timing of the Hamas attack was to prevent any such occurrence. So throughout the war, I think Saudi Arabia has been carefully watching to make sure that Israel remains the strong horse against Iran and its proxies. Because if it doesn't, observing, if Israel were to lose the war, Saudi Arabia would not make a normalization agreement with Israel. So the role that Saudi Arabia can play is encouraging Israel to strike Iran, basically, without coming out and saying that in so many words. But we've seen that the Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia, they are also directly threatened by Iranian nuclear power. And so, they are actually, Saudi Arabia is rooting for Israel to beat and to defeat Iran and especially its nuclear weapons.
Now, of course, we've been talking a lot about military actions. We saw a lot happening with the economy, the global economy. What are the implications of the new U.S. Treasury sanctions issued earlier week? We know that the Prime Minister was in the Oval Office with the President, said that he did want to work with the White House in this endeavor.
Well, if you're talking about the sanctions on Iran, as was the case during President Trump's first term in office, the sanctions really did help, because starving the regime of its ability to proceed quickly with the nuclear development, that's crucial. The regime doesn't care about its people, of course. That the economy is in dire shape in Iran, and the Iranian people who are the ones feeling it, not the mullahs ruling the people. What they care about, those mullahs, are themselves and the nuclear program. So it is very helpful to impose really harsh sanctions, but it's not sufficient.
Ruthie Blum, certainly a story we will continue to watch. Thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you so much, Veronica.
This is Ticker. We'll be right back.